This is Nasha Kasha, a Ukrainian almanac. 28 minutes of stories for everyone about Ukrainian life. Nasha Kasha is heard on 19 campus and community radio stations from Newfoundland to British Columbia. I'm your reporter, Stefan Andrusiak. This is episode 209, but it was also our very first show. In May of 2016, thanks to introductions from Professor Marta Dechok, I invited two postgraduate students at Western University to come together to tell me their respective stories. Each comes from eastern Ukraine. One is from the port of Mariupol, a city caught today between a war just 8 kilometers away and a Russian blockade choking its access on the Azov Sea. The other participant is from Crimea, where in March of 2014, Russia occupied that entire peninsula, and we talked about it. I will replay much of that original interview, but before we go, you will also hear from each of these remarkable doctoral candidates about their lives today.
I'm Natalia Domina. I'm a third-year PhD student in comparative literature here at Western. I was born in Mariupol. It's in southeast of Ukraine.
My name is Maksym I'm from Sevastopol, which is in Crimea. I was born and raised there. I'm finishing my first year PhD program in history.
I like that London is a small and comfortable city to live in.
It's about the size of Mariupol. Mariupol's, 450,000? We're 380?
About 500,000, but now with internally displaced people, I think it's even more than 500,000. There are a lot of people from Donetsk and Luhansk region who had to leave their homes.
Yeah, I was born and raised in Sevastopol. I finished my school there, and then I went to Kiev to study at university.
Now, both of you are too young to remember the Soviet Union, right? You were born after 91, or?
No,
Is this a personal question?
No, it's okay. I was born in 1983, but thank you for the compliment. And I do remember a little bit of the Soviet Union, namely very long lines in stores.
Well, I was born in 1991, 6 months before the dissolution of the USSR. I do not remember Soviet Union itself.
In Eastern Ukraine, there are people of different backgrounds. There are many people, especially in Sevastopol, of Russian background. How has Ukraine done in sharing Ukraine with people who aren't of traditional Ukrainian birth and background? Does everybody feel that this is a place where I and my children can grow up, and that person over there will treat me as an equal?
In general, I think yes, Ukraine did great accommodating people of different nationalities. Yet, much like in any other country, there are instances of racism and homophobia. But other than that, in general, yes, Ukraine is a nice and safe place for all nationalities.
No one is saying this is my country historically and you don't belong or anything along those lines.
Well, again, I can't speak for everybody.
Of course. But that's not the general...
The general mood, no.
Okay. It must be beautiful on the Sea of Azov. It's a port city, and yet it's a very industrial city, right? Can you paint a picture for us?
The city of Mariupol was founded in 1772, and before that it was a Greek colony. The people from Crimea actually were sent to live in Mariupol, and so they took all the names of the cities in Crimea and villages. And they built their settlements in Mariupol and around Mariupol.
This is the electro-folk band Onuka, which means granddaughter, with Misto. Misto means city.
Народжує ранок, лине
18 столітті
In the 18th century, the Russian empress,
російська імператриця,
I think it was Catherine
не
II,
помиляюся, це Катерина II була,
she attempted to colonize
колонізувати фактично Крим.
Crimea, Crimea.
Приводом, тобто треба було виселити православних греків.
She needed to expel Greeks of the Orthodox faith who had settled there.
Захистити від мусульман кримських татар. Кращого захисту не знайшли, зібрали всіх греків і виселили в район теперішнього Маріуполя.
They couldn't fabricate a better pretext, so they gathered all of the Greeks and expelled them to what is now Mariupol.
Так, тобто приводом, офіційним принаймні приводом, була потреба захистити греків від мусульман.
And she did this on the pretext that the Greeks needed protecting from the Muslims.
З колонізації півострова Потьомкін вимагав виселити кримських татар так само в 18 столітті.
It's for the same reason of colonization that they also expelled the Crimean Tatars. Grigory Potemkin was among the initiators of this action.
So displacement is a part of the history of Crimea. And
I would say colonization is a part of the history of Crimea. So there was first wave in the 18th century when they displaced number of Greeks and they displaced number of people. They took the land of Crimean Tatars. Then they forced basically the whole, I would say, 19th century is a process of expelling Crimean Tatars abroad. So it is the whole century is a wave of immigration of Crimean Tatars from Crimea.
recently you informed me and others about the closing of the Tatar parliament. Do I have that correctly?
Well, it is called Crimean Tatar Majlis, yeah. And by the way, today they have another trial. I did not look up in the news what is the result, but they were going to possibly proclaim as an extremist organization. Basically, this means that the whole political leadership of Crimean Tatars has to be expelled from Crimea, otherwise they're arrested. Yeah, it means that nation is deprived of its leadership. So right now the rhetoric of Russian occupants in Crimea is quoting, protecting Crimea from terrorist attacks, from Muslim terrorists. We have never had any issues of Muslim terrorists. We have never had any even idea of a possibility of any kind of terrorist attack in Crimea for 25 years since the independence, since Ukraine gained its independence. And now here we are, second year after Crimea was annexed by Russia, they're talking about possible terrorism.
Just one more thing. When Ukraine became an independent country, it created or agreed to a republic status for Crimea?
It was a complicated story. There was, let's say it like this, the influence of Russian forces in Crimea has always been strong. So in early 90s, I think it was 1992, they already tried to proclaim Crimea as a part of Russia. So they fought for autonomy and they fought for the right to be able to elect the Crimean president, and they did once. And this president won with a program which said that he wants Crimea to become a part of Russia. So it is a complicated story, but yes, all those political struggles between Kyiv and Simferopol, which is the capital of Crimean Autonomous Republic, led to the proclamation of autonomous republic within the sovereign, independent, integral, unitary Ukraine. So it is not like a federation. It is an autonomous republic as a part of a unitary country.
was the Crimean Tatar song Bakhchalarda Kestane, performed by Taruta and Ali Kadzabadinova. Kestane, in Ukrainian, kashtane, chestnuts in the garden. Nasha Kasha comes to you from CHRW 94.9 FM on the campus of Western University in London, Ontario, Canada. We're heard on CHMR 93.5 FM in St. John's, Newfoundland, on CKDU 88.1 FM in Halifax, on Local 107.3 FM in St. John, New Brunswick, on CJAS Radio 93.5 FM in Saint Augustine, Quebec, on CJLO 1690 AM in Montreal, on CFRC 101.9 FM in Kingston, on CFMU 93.3 FM in Hamilton, on CKMS 102.7 FM in Kitchener-Waterloo, on CJAM 99.1 FM in Windsor and Detroit, on CKLU 96.7 FM in Sudbury, on CILU 102.7 FM in Thunder Bay, on 101.5 UMFM in Winnipeg, on CJTR 91.3 FM in Regina, on CFMQ 98.1 FM in Hudson Bay, Saskatchewan, on CFBX 92.5 FM in Kamloops, on CIVL 101.7 FM in Abbotsford, on CJSF 90.1 FM in Vancouver, and on CHLY 101.7 FM in Nanaimo, British Columbia.
Ти мені раніше сказала, що
Natalia tells me that original settlers may have named Mariupol after the Blessed Virgin Mary.
Одна з версій, яка мені більше за всі подобається, це та, що Маріуполь було засновано на честь Святої Марії, Матері Ісуса Христа.
It's one story,
Але різні версії є.
but it's my favorite.
Маріуполь завжди був частиною Радянського Союзу 70 років, так?
Mariupol was a part of the Soviet Union for 70 years.
Секулярний дуже.
So it was, as it is, a largely secular society.
Але є церкви,
But there are churches.
які скрізь в Україні боротьба
As in the rest of Ukraine, there is some friction among Orthodox believers.
патріархатом. І
The Moscovite Patriarchate dominates both the number of churches and attendees.
і кількістю прихожан.
The symbol of the city
Символ міста,
is an anchor immersed in seawater.
герб, якщо хочете, це якір у морі.
Такий колір, як і твого будинку номер. Я би приїхав, але мій ровер ще не вигадали, не зібрали, не побудували шлях. Цей цвях тримає дах, не вдах. У цього моря такий подих, як до очей долоні дотик. А море темне зовсім як твій поверх. Але сьогодні не тоді, і зараз я не я. Ще одна з маленьких трагедій, ще одного дня. Все тече, я гадав, що ти лише вода. Все тече, згори вниз, все мене колись. Все тече, я гадав, що ти лише вода. Все тече, згори вниз, все мене. Сиджу на березі, живий, здоровий, справи шито-крито. Ніяк не здогадатись, що мого туза побито. Щоднями якось я піду горами, ляжу знаком оклику, слідами напишу, де ж саме жив. Був жив, не притягався, не служив. Злітав одного разу, але сам розібрав той пазл. Розірвав малюнок, зруйнував будинок, підняв якоря. Одна з маленьких трагедій, ще одного дня. Все тече, я гадав, що ти лише вода. Все тече, згори вниз, все мене колись.
Ти лише вода. It's a song about the sea and a woman who's as hard to grasp as water itself. The musicians call themselves TNMK, Танок на Майдані Конго.
І як у кожній касі, все закінчується добре. Всі герої живуть до смерті, на сніданок хлоп'я, на вечерю мило. Чужі трагедії, він, вона, вони, все просто, як азбуки Веді. А я тоді пішов від моря, живий, здоровий, шито-крито. Отримало давно минуле своє мито. Не вигадавши ровера, нікому не побудували шлях. Цей цвях тримає дах. Все тече, я гадав, що ти лише вода. Все тече, згори вниз, все мене колись, все тече, а я гадав, що ти лише вода, все тече, згори вниз, все мене болить, все тече.
В Лондоні я, тому що
I came to London because it's a really good program in comparative studies. It's a large university with impressive library resources. There were a few people here from my old alma mater, the Mohila Institute. Between Western and Mohila,
Між Вестерном та нашим з Максимом університетом Києво-Могилянською академією були підписані якісь договори.
there are cooperative agreements that have been signed.
Ми не чужі одне.
So we're not strangers here.
So you studied at the Kyiv Mohila Institute, and you're at Western right now. What are your academic interests?
My academic interests are utopia and dystopia, experimental fiction, translation. I'm also interested in prison literature and getting ready to go home. I can't wait to read Nadia Savchenko's book that my mom bought, and her sister signed it.
Prison literature, meaning literature written in prison?
Written in prison.
Or about prison by others?
Written either about prison or in prison and about prison, but yes, and Gulag in particular.
Я закінчив Києво-Могилянську академію
I finished my studies at the Kyiv-Mohila Institute, a
з
university.
Варшавським університетом.
It was in conjunction with the University of Warsaw.
На європейській студії.
East European Studies was my focus.
В Могилянській академії це історія.
I completed my master's.
Весь час займався дипломатичною історією.
I was interested in diplomatic history.
Зараз переключився, от після останніх подій, переключився на історію Криму. Це для мене нова
The history of Crimea is what I want to research. I grew up there.
Як тема наукових зацікавлень, вона для мене нова.
The endeavor is new for me. I'm trying to establish Russian influences on Crimea in the 1990s.
90-х роках.
Will you be returning soon?
Yes, I'm going back to Ukraine in May the 2nd, so actually next week. Yes, and I will stay in Mariupol for the summer. At least I'll make an attempt.
Понятно, хто я такий.
People in Crimea know who I am and my point of view. I have no idea what would happen to me if I ever returned.
Я не знаю, що зі мною буде, якщо я туди потраплю просто. I am a social activist. I participated in Euromaidan, in the revolution several years ago. So they clearly know who I am and what are my views on the annexation and occupation. So I just assume that they may not like me being present there, and I could be either arrested or I don't know what can happen else.
I'd like our listeners to know something very important about Ukraine, that Ukraine is a modern state and very welcoming, that there are no fascists in Ukraine. And what looks like a civil war is in fact an invasion. Українці, незалежно від того, де вони є,
Ukrainians, no matter where they are in the world,
дуже вболівають за Україну.
are very concerned about Ukraine.
Є надія на те, що
And there is hope
ми всі,
that we will
доклавши
all,
зусиль,
having combined our
будемо
strength,
мати
will have
процвітаючу
a flowering
Україну.
Ukraine.
I would say that just pay attention to Eastern Europe right now, because that's where history is going on right now. This war with Ukraine will influence Europe. It will influence international stability. It already influences international stability. So it's just, if you want to know what is going on in the world, you should pay attention to Eastern Europe right now.
So currently, I'm interested in new Ukrainian electronic music, and there's also a rising star, Jamala, who will be in Eurovision from Ukraine this year, and she's presenting a very interesting song about Crimea.
When strangers are coming, they come to your house, they kill you all and say we're not guilty. is your mind. Humanity cries. You think you are God, but everyone dies. Don't swallow my soul. Our souls. Yaşlığıma doyamadım. Ben bu yerde yaşamadım. Yaşlığıma doyamadım. Ben bu yerde yaşamadım. It could build a future where people are free to live and love the happiest time, hard time. Where's your heart? Humanity rise. You think you're God, but everyone dies. Don't swallow my soul, our souls. Yaşlığıma doyamadım. Ben bu yerde yaşamadım. Aman aman. Yaşlığıma doyamadım. Ben bu yerde yaşamadım.
Susanna Alamyevna Jamaladinova, better known as Jamala, represented Ukraine and did win the Eurovision Song Contest of 2016. Her song, 1944, tells the story of mass deportation of Crimean Tatars in that year. Nearly 8,000 died, while tens of thousands perished in the harsh exile to Asia. Jamala's great-grandmother, Nazil Khan, and her 5 children were among those resettled, even though Nazil Khan's husband was in the Red Army fighting at the time. One of their children, a daughter, died.
Vatanıma doyamadım.
Hi, this is Maksym Svezhentsev. We recorded this interview with Natalia Domina for the Nasha Kasha over 4 years ago. As far as I remember, we spoke about the current politics, history of Ukraine, history of Crimea, and a little bit of Mariupol. Since that time, I've been a PhD candidate at the Department of History of Western University, and I've submitted my PhD dissertation on the post-Soviet Crimea and the Russian settler colonialism just a little bit less than a month ago. My dissertation is scheduled for defense on June 16th. Other than that, I've been working on the history of Crimea this whole time, living in London, Ontario. Me and my wife just had a baby about 2 months ago. He's a little bit older than 2 months. His name is Volodymyr, and he's growing very fast. I hope everybody is staying safe during the pandemic, and I hope you will enjoy this interview.
Hi everyone, I'm Natalia from Ukraine and I'm still a PhD student in comparative literature at Western University. A couple of years ago I moved to sunny Florida and here I struggled to finish my dissertation on post-Soviet space. Particularly, I explore how Russian and Ukrainian post-Soviet narratives configure the concepts of border, center and periphery, as well as dislocation of the self. Basically, I study how deconstruction of Soviet space relates to the construction of post-Soviet narratives. Other than that, I dance Lindy Hop, which really helps maintain sanity in these insane times. Thank you, and stay healthy, guys.
Natalia spoke of the Lindy Hop. Well, this is Lindy Hop music, recorded at the Jack and Jill finals of the Lindy Hop in 2018. You can see it on YouTube. The band is the Hot Engines. Vasily Kiselev is the leader. The band is based in Moscow. I'd like to gratefully acknowledge that partial funding for Nasha Kasha is provided by the Shevchenko Foundation and the Ukrainian Credit Union. I'm your reporter Stefan Andrusiak. Back in a week, God willing. До милої зустрічі за тиждень часу, дорогі слухачі.